Okay, welcome along for another lore update. Like and subscribe for more from the lore. There's been no burning stations this week, so my squad hasn't had a lot to do on that score, but Operation Witch Hunt is still ongoing, and we've had a couple of developments in the Salvation narrative. Earlier this week, a community goal was released on Tuesday. Unusual for one to be released on Tuesday, but not unprecedented. It has happened before, with community goals being released on a day other than Thursday. And this one was to bring yet more Guardian artifacts for Salvation. And so for those of us wondering if he might be firing his super weapon this week, the answer is apparently no. So on Tuesday this came out. Guardian artifacts needed to power super weapon. Azimuth Biotech urgently requires deliveries of Guardian artifacts to HIP 22460 as vital components of the Proteus wave. Salvation issued an official request to the Allied Federal and Imperial Task Forces, which was then shared via public channels. We have now begun assembly of the Proteus wave. Our existing stockpile of Guardian material was sufficient to begin construction, but we must now establish a supply line capable of delivering the quantity needed to finish the weapon. Azimuth Biotech has established an initiative to encourage independent pilots to supply the Bright Sentinel megaship with Guardian commodities. Azimuth are also offering additional ship liveries to contributors. Pilots can deliver any combination of Guardian caskets, orbs, relics, tablets, totems and urns to the Bright Sentinel megaship in HIP 22460. And the paint job that they were offering, still are offering, is exactly like the white one you saw in the last video, except it's silver. And instead of being called the Azimuth Rebellion paint job, I think it's called the Azimuth Deliverance or something like that. So in Inara they're at 142,000 out of 550,000. So they are just under 26% to completion. It could be completed at the current rate of gathering slightly before the end of Tuesday, but all things being equal, I would expect that to run its course unless there's a real glut of hand-ins over the weekend. Maybe everybody trying to sort of get it to happen as quickly as possible. It could happen Monday, it could happen Tuesday. Obviously, as soon as it does happen, I'll update you on that. The last CG, the last community goal to hand in basic medicines, advanced medicines and reactive armour finished, and it reached tier 2 with 17,174,555 out of the 79 million required. 21.74% completed, but that was enough to make the CG a success. It only needed to reach tier 1, and an article came out today confirming that medical and military commodities have been delivered to the HIP 22460 system in support of the anti-Xeno operation. Commodore Morag Halloran expressed gratitude that so many commanders took part in the initiative. She indicated that payment was now available from the megaship Heart of Taurus. This includes tailored ship liveries for those commanders who made the greatest contributions. Azimuth Biotech has requested that pilots continue supporting the operation by obtaining Guardian artifacts, which will form part of the Proteus wave's construction process. These can be delivered to the Bright Sentinel megaship. The shipments of advanced medicines, basic medicines and reactive armour will be distributed by Azimuth Biotech to the Allied Federal and Imperial Task Forces within the system. Experimental anti-Xeno weaponry has been installed on the 3 Task Force flagships: the Alliance megaship, the Oath of Tindarius, the Farragut-class battlecruiser, the FNS Fortitude, and the Majestic-class interdictor, the INV Audacious Dream. Both the Federal and Imperial navies intend to reinforce their presence in HIP 22460 at the appropriate time. We're going to go and have a look at the HIP 22460 system and see what is going on there. But before we do, there was one more article that came out. The Salvation Stratagem where we finally find out what he's up to. As the superpowers establish their fleets in the HIP 22460 system, Azimuth Biotech prepares to deliver a decisive blow against the Thargoids. A segment from Salvation's briefing to the Anti-Xeno Task Force admirals was shared by Azimuth. The Proteus wave relies on power sources and components of Guardian origin, which will inevitably draw the Thargoids to HIP 22460. As we know, their hostile reaction to stockpiles of Guardian artifacts is instinctive. They have no defense against the weaponry of their ancient enemies, other than to launch preemptive strikes to prevent them being deployed. Therefore, the Bright Sentinel must be protected as a priority, while delivered artifacts are processed for transport to the Proteus Wave site, with independent pilots who support our endeavour aiding these efforts. I cannot stress enough how vital it is to keep the enemy at bay during this phase of the plan. The Proteus Wave will be constructed on the surface of HIP 22460 10B. You might remember that's the moon that got permit locked last week, which has the two Thargoid sites on it. Its core mechanism will be calibrated to interface with one of the extant Thargoid structures present on the moon. The structure will amplify the Proteus Wave's electromagnetic pulse to permanently shut down every Thargoid vessel within range. Providing your combined forces can keep the Thargoid vessels occupied, the finished superweapon will ensure humanity's final victory against the aliens. There will be no need for further superweapons when the Thargoid threat has been extinguished once and for all. This message was received by the player base with reactions, mostly the variation on a theme of, yeah right, and I'm the next pope. But it's quite audacious as a plan. I mean, the idea of, I've said before, the idea of Salvation actually being an evil nutter, a bit of an old cliche, bit of a terrible old cliche, but at least what he's doing is interesting. He's going to link his weapon, which is based on Guardian technology, with a Thargoid site, linking the technology of two ancient enemies together, and using one to amplify the other. Now, if any of you have ever gone to one of the Thargoid bases where you can operate the star map by taking various Thargoid artifacts there, you'll know that if you take a Guardian object into that site instead, they go mental. They really don't like it. They really, really don't like it. Thargoids have a naturally hostile reaction to any Guardian technology. If you've never gone to look at a Thargoid star map, go and do it anyway, because it's a really interesting thing to go and do. But then, if you're feeling dangerous, try taking a Guardian object in there and see what happens. It's pretty mental. And so, I can imagine Guardian objects in the presence of a Thargoid site on the ground, triggering a wave of hostile energy, which he's going to harness somehow and use to amplify his weapon. That's a pretty audacious plan, with which he hopes to attract all the Thargoids from everywhere that they're attacking, from everywhere that they exist. I mean, it does seem a little bit far-fetched, doesn't it, that absolutely every Thargoid is going to turn up to the party. But we will have to see what happens. The CG finishes on Tuesday, then it's likely that nothing will happen much before Wednesday. Or maybe even they might leave it until next Thursday. That will be just in time for LaveCon, a big event just before LaveCon to get everybody talking about it, who's going there. That timing isn't a coincidence, is it? So yeah, okay, he's going to somehow marry Guardian and Thargoid technology together, or use the Thargoid technology to amplify the wave, this energy wave, that his Guardian technology is producing. And this is going to attract all of the Thargoids to the system, and then he's going to use his super weapon to wipe them out all in one fell swoop. What could possibly go wrong? I mean, apart from everything, what could possibly go wrong? Okay, so whatever's going to happen, the big event is going to happen presumably next week. Maybe on Wednesday after the CG ends on Tuesday. Maybe if the CG ends early, it may happen on Monday and Tuesday. Or maybe they'll leave it till Thursday. We'll have to see, and I will obviously update you as and when that happens. But in the meantime, let's go to HIP 22460, where the Thargoids are currently attacking all three megaships. The Federation, Empire, and Alliance megaships are all being attacked by Thargoids, and there are AX conflict zones in the system. So let's go take a look at them.
This system is crawling with Thargoids. If we don't push them back, we'll be overrun. Think you can handle it?
Warning, shield breach under attack, taking damage. Warning, caustic damage detected. Programming limit drone.
So here we are at the FNS Fortitude, and as you can see, they've turned it into an AX conflict zone.
Taking damage. Caustic substance neutralized.
Where you can join the fight if you want, or decline. I'm going to decline because I'm not really in a Thargoid fighting ship. And here you can see the FNS Fortitude giving it everything against the Thargoids, and also there are plenty of Federal ships here in support. The Federal Navy also helping out, and you've got a variety of scouts and interceptors here, as you would expect from an AX conflict zone.
Target destroyed.
Now, if you look in contacts and if you target the FNS Fortitude, you'll see that they're calling it an experimental Farragut class battlecruiser, and this refers presumably to the experimental weapons that have been placed on this ship to help it hold off the Thargoids until Salvation can prepare his Proteus wave. And it's giving a fairly good account of itself.
Energy surge detected.
And I think I'm about to get shut down. Yep, I am. Didn't get my field neutralizer on in time. So yeah. Knocked out my little vulture there. I don't really fight Thargoids, so I have this vulture with a couple of AX multi-cannons that I will fight scouts with. Normally just to break up the action a bit when I'm doing rescues from burning stations. So I'll rescue a few passengers, I'll rescue a few escape pods, and I'll take any scout killing missions from the rescue ship. And by alternating between those three, I get a bit of variety and also a decent amount of money. So okay, here's an interceptor having a go at the megaship. Let's see if I can get close enough to scan it and find out what it is. Okay, it's a Cyclops. I love the way these things just warp space around them. And you get that weird warping effect. It looks very, very cool. And this is obviously a very dangerous place for me to be in a ship that's incapable of killing them. So there you go, that's the FNS Fortitude. So far holding its own against the Thargoids. People have tried to see if parts of these megaships can be destroyed. The heat relays don't appear to be able to be destroyed, which is normally, if you saw these in a conflict zone, you would destroy the heat relays to force them to retreat. The heat relays on these appear to be indestructible. You can take out the weapons, reduce them to 0, and they'll stay at 0 until you re-instance. You can also take the hull down to 0. Players have reported doing that, but it doesn't make any difference. So presumably this AX conflict zone will continue right up until Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, or whenever they actually decide that enough is enough and Salvation fires his super weapon. So that's the FNS Fortitude. Let's go and look at one of the others. The INV Audacious Dream. Nothing pretentious about that name at all. Again, you can see it's referred to as an experimental Majestic class interdictor.
This system is crawling with Thargoids. If we don't push them back, we'll be overrun. Think you can handle it?
And again, the message to engage in the conflict zone that is centered around the ship. And again, I'm not going to.
If you're not going to help, stay the hell out of our way.
Suit yourself. I'm not really in a position to help.
Taking damage.
I could maybe kill a few scouts, but I've got no chance against interceptors. Not as many guns as on the Farragut battlecruiser, of course. And again, several Imperial anti-Xeno ships in support and being attacked by a combination of scouts and interceptors. And again, like the Federation ship, it's giving quite a good account of itself, holding its own in all other respects. No real differences. Either in difficulty or in number of combatants. Oh, Berserker Scout there. If I am fighting scouts, those are always the ones that I take out first. So there's your Empire Majestic class interdictor, again being called an experimental ship, so presumably like the Federation ship, fitted with Salvation's experimental AX weapons. The approach to the Oath of Tindarius being slowed down by the nearby gas giant exerting its gravity. So even though it was only a couple of light seconds away, it's taken a good minute or so to get from one to the other without flying away from the gas giant and back in. Finally, here we are at the Oath of Tindarius, the Alliance ship, and it just shows us a Hogan.
This system is crawling with Thargoids. If we don't push them back, we'll be overrun. Think you can handle it?
So there you go once again. The invite to join the fight or decline.
We're at war, pilot. If you're not gonna help,
Stay the hell out of our way. I'm not exactly in your way, but there you go. The Oath of Tindarius the Oath of Tindarius is not shown as being an experimental ship, from which I'm going to assume that it's not fitted with Salvation's
Under attack.
experimental weapons. But what it is fitted with appear to be the anti-Xeno missile racks, which were not developed by Salvation, developed by Aegis, I believe. And there's also a little bug here. Now, I've not attacked that turret at all, I've not even bumped into it, but there is a bug around the Alliance ship that just approaching it will gain you a bounty for apparently assaulting the automated defense turrets. Even though I've got no weapons deployed, I haven't rammed them, all I've done is flown near them to have a look at them, and that is enough to get you a bounty. So if you come here, watch out for that, because you will get redirected to a prison ship when you hand yourself in, that's about 90 light years away down in the Pleiades. Although some people have said that what you can do is you can log into Horizons and get your bounty cleared, I believe at the Bright Sentinel, but don't quote me on that, but at one of the mega ships anyway. So that's a workaround if this happens to you. Again, a combination of interceptors and scouts attacking the ship, and again, Alliance anti-Xeno forces fighting them. But yeah, there are no lasers on this, there are no railguns on this. This ship seems to be equipped only with missile racks. So that makes it distinctive from the Federation and the Empire ship, as well as not being labelled as an experimental mega ship.
Under attack.
And it also seems to be a lot less effective at killing the Thargoids than the other two mega ships, mostly relying on the ships in support to do that job. Nevertheless, quite fun to watch the turrets firing off, although mostly they seem to be firing at itself. But there you go, occasionally they are firing out at the Thargoids. There's a missile that's just been fired out at this vessel, which looks like some kind of scout. It is, it's a regenerator scout. So those are your 3 superpower megaships. Each with a little conflict zone, AX conflict zone, centered around them, and each with ships from their power, Federation, Empire, and Alliance ships, in support of the mega ships fighting in these AX conflict zones. And that's presumably going to go on Thargoids waking in and out. There's a frame shift anomaly there. Seems to be pretty standard stuff as far as that goes. And this will presumably continue until they have enough goods from the CG, until enough Guardian artifacts have been handed in.
Surge detected. Frame shift drive charging.
And I just managed to escape the energy surge there. So if you want to go and fight in any of those AX conflict zones, knock yourselves out, they're all there. Or you can go to any of the other AX conflict zones, there's plenty of them. There you are, there they all are. All low and medium intensities. Which is another new thing. AX conflict zones don't normally have intensities attached to them. You don't get low, medium and high intensity AX conflict zones. That's for like conflict zones, or human conflict zones have those. AX conflict zones don't normally, so that's a new thing as well. Giving them intensity levels. To my knowledge, that's the first time they've ever done that. A couple of people have commented on it as well, so I believe that's true. Don't think anything's happening at the Overlook, but we can go and take a quick look. And there it is, the Black Flight megaship that got trashed. It's not a conflict zone, no message, so yeah. As I suspected, pretty much as it was the last time we saw it. And a Thargoid may or may not wake in and fire at it for the look of the thing and wake out again. And there's nothing to do here that we haven't already done. I've been trying to pin down what it is about Salvation that annoys me, beyond him being a walking cliche of apparent good guy turns out to be an evil nutter, and how over the top and unoriginal that is. Douglas Adams once said that if you want to write a good villain, then you have them do bad things, but have something about them that people can sympathise with, something about the character, something about their motives, whatever it may be. So for example, let's say you create some megalomaniac who wants to rule the world or the galaxy or the universe, but you put something in there that makes them more than just some evil maniac. Yeah? So perhaps they were kidnapped or tortured or bullied, or perhaps those they loved were murdered by someone who was just as bad in their own way and the law didn't care, so the perpetrators were never brought to justice. Or perhaps they were a victim of some other kind of injustice by some totalitarian society that was just as bad as they are, or maybe in some ways even worse. Something like that. And it also helps to mix it up a bit, so essentially good people doing some bad things and the villains occasionally doing something good, maybe inadvertently doing something good while trying to do something bad. It makes the characters and the story more interesting, and it gets away from the cliches of black and white, good and evil, hero and genocidal nutter. It doesn't excuse the actions of the villain, but it does make them more than just an evil cardboard cutout with no redeeming features, you know, and raises them above the level of comic book caricature. And I think that's my problem with Salvation as a villain. You know, because assuming that he is Caleb Wycherley and not some successor, maybe even if he is some successor, so far the character has demonstrated no redeeming features whatsoever. He's a xenophobe who doesn't just hate the Thargoids for attacking humans, but really despises them and thinks they are primitive and unintelligent and little better than animals or insects. This is despite them being older than humans or Guardians, with a culture that goes back well over 1 million years before humans existed. He took a sadistic pleasure in watching them being experimented on, and clearly enjoyed their agony as they were tortured, considering the injuries he got as a price worth paying. He mocks them, as he incredulously wonders how such animals ever developed any kind of technology at all, and he claims to be offended at their arrogance, for thinking they could ever be as good as humans. He's made no attempt to understand them beyond discovering what he needs to know to kill them, and generally holds them in disgust and contempt. That goes way beyond just seeing them as an enemy combatant. Okay, the first step to waging war on anyone is to dehumanize them, But his attitude is extreme even for that. His human experiments and the murder and destruction that he's left in his wake as part of his crusade against the Thargoids shows that he thinks nothing is more important than his crusade. Not even people of his own race who he's supposed to be doing all this for. It doesn't give you much faith in his claims that he's doing all this for humanity. They're laying it on a bit too thick with his reluctant anti-hero act, and it's not working. He's an arrogant, narcissistic, human supremacist with a messiah complex and all the wit, charm and sophistication of a hemorrhoid. If he was any more two-dimensional, he'd fold up in the rain. And there's a significant portion of the player base who think his weapon could be turned on people as easily as the Thargoids, and since he's already sacrificed people for his cause, can we really trust him not to do it again? Or for someone else to take his technology and use it against their fellow humans? It's all dodgy with nothing nice about any of it, nothing redeemable about any of it. Even if you think the Thargoids should be wiped out, having such a person in charge of doing it, who has demonstrated time and again that he doesn't care who or what he sacrifices in order to achieve that, you know, that's not somebody you can trust to be in your corner. It really isn't. Next week, he'll fire off, presumably, his super weapon, and we may get a result straight away, or it might just be a couple more weeks while they sort of finish off that little story and then end it with the update that we believe is due in August sometime. But yep, for better or worse, this is the end game. Nothing much more to do or say about it until we have any further developments. If we do, then I'll be back to tell you all about them. Until then, take care out in the black, watch your back, and be careful who you trust.